Okay, picking up with question 13. What are three things that Lincoln did during the Civil War which challenged the Constitution? The first and probably most important is that he suspended the writ of habeas corpus. What that means is he jailed people who were suspected of sympathizing with the Confederacy without a charge, without trial, and held them indefinitely throughout the duration of the war. The second one, letter B, Lincoln also spent money without congressional authorization. And finally, letter C, Lincoln called out the state militias and increased the size of the Navy, also without the consent of Congress. 14, why did Lincoln do this? Why were personal liberties limited during the Civil War? Lincoln was willing to do this because he was so focused on victory and preserving the Union that he was willing to set aside some of those civil liberties and suspend things like the writ of habeas corpus to focus his full efforts on being successful fighting the war. 15 asked about the Emancipation Proclamation. So slavery was not outlawed everywhere immediately after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. Technically, it only freed slaves in the states that were in rebellion and that had seceded from the Union. Additionally, it couldn't really be enforced, even where it was supposedly outlawing slavery. 16, when Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, what power did he claim? He used his presidential power as commander-in-chief of the armed forces, as he said it was a military measure in that freed slaves could potentially fight for the Union Army. Question 17 asks about the three Reconstruction amendments. So the 13th Amendment, the key word is free because that ended slavery. The 14th Amendment, the key word is citizens. This amendment said that all people, including African Americans who are born in the U.S., are citizens and get equal protection or equal treatment under the law. Finally, the 15th Amendment, the key word is vote. This amendment gave black men, but not women, the right to vote. 18, what kept President Andrew Johnson from getting most of his Reconstruction plan enacted? So President Johnson faced strong opposition from the radical Republicans in Congress. He eventually gets impeached and kind of loses his political power. 19, what were two examples of black codes that were enacted in the South? One of them was vagrancy laws that essentially made it a crime for a black person to be unemployed. They could be then arrested and then sentenced to go work a fine off on a plantation. Additionally, letter B, black people were not allowed to carry a gun or testify in a court of law. Number 20, what did the Tenure of Office Act have to do with the impeachment and removal of President Andrew Johnson? So, the radical Republicans who were opposed to Johnson and his plan for Reconstruction accused Johnson of violating this law. They impeached him. He was not removed from office, but again, after his impeachment, he kind of lost his political power. 21, why did they do this? Why did the radical Republicans want to get rid of Johnson? Again, he was opposed to the radical Republicans' plan for Reconstruction. Johnson's plan was much more lenient on the South. The radical Republicans in Congress wanted to punish the South. 22, how did many white Southern Democrats view the Republican Party? Carpetbaggers and scalawags. All three of these groups were widely hated in the South, again, especially by white Southerners who resented the fact that newly freed African Americans had political power. 23, describe the Compromise of 1877, which followed the election of 1876. So under this compromise, electoral college votes, they were contested in several states. So the compromise gave these disputed votes to the Republican candidate, Rutherford B. Hayes. He became president. Democrats accepted this because Reconstruction ended, and Hayes agreed to remove federal troops from the South. 24, after the Redeemers took control of the South, Jim Crow laws were created. Examples of some of these laws, again, include segregation. So total segregation or separation of the races in public spaces. So things like schools, neighborhoods, train cars, businesses, places like that were totally segregated by race. 25, describe the case of Plessy v. Ferguson. So Homer Plessy was a man with African-American ancestry. He challenged a segregation law in a train car. The case made it all the way to the Supreme Court, who upheld the constitutionality or upheld the legality of segregation. And what they did was refer to the 14th Amendment, which said that all citizens must receive equal protection. What the court said was segregation was constitutional as long as the segregated facilities were equal. And separate but equal is that phrase that comes from that case. Last but not least, we're describing the differences between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Booker T. Washington supported advancement for African Americans through vocational education and achieving economic equality. W.E.B. Du Bois really focused on college education and wanted more immediate equality for newly freed African Americans.